We're back, and despite the bank holiday weather, we're here with a 90-minute special.
As usual, we've got a packed star cast. Lots of old familiar faces, as well as some new and adorable ones to add to the list as well.
And I'm up in Shetland having a whale of a time.
It's going to be gargantuan. Welcome to Springwatch. Yes, hello and welcome to Springwatch 2018, coming to you from the National Trust Sherborne Park Estate in the heart of Gloucestershire. And we're live here for 3 weeks, starting with this feature-length programme. Yes, the full 90 minutes. Not 3D, I'm afraid, but the full 90 minutes without a shred of a doubt. Now, the thing is, we may not have even had a spring a couple of weeks ago. But thankfully it's sprung now and everything's going boing and the wildlife at Sherborne is looking great. Sherborne Park Estate is about 4,106 acres of mixed farmland. Got some sheep, got some cattle, got some arable, got lots of pasture, good for hares, also good for the badgers, like to come out. Like this cub here, rummaging around for its first earthworm meal. Then, of course, we've got the waterways, the Sherborne Brook, the Windrush River, and down there we've got waterfowl like these lovely cygnets that we saw earlier today. Plenty of other wildlife that you'll be familiar with, maybe in your back garden, down the street, over the fence, on the local nature reserve. Foxes, my favourite British mammal, absolutely fantastic. And I know I'm going to use the C word before Michaela can get it in. Cute. This mini muntjac takes the crown at the top of the programme.
You've got to do an R. It is cute. It's adorable. Lots of fantastic wildlife to look forward to, and it's great to be back. But you may have noticed we're missing someone. Our good friend Martin Hughes Games is not joining us for this Springwatch, and there's no doubt about it, we'll miss him, won't we, Chris?
Well,
we will
I'm missing
miss
him
him
a lot, to be honest with you, Michaela, because when I popped into your caravan earlier and wanted a conversation about the ME-262 Second World War jet fighter aircraft, you really didn't know anything about it, which is worrying me because I need to do that on a daily basis. Anyway, look, I've got you a little book. If you can gen up overnight on a very, very interesting old aircraft, the Spitfire, Martin would have known everything about this. So I'll be in tomorrow morning about 10:30 and have a nice chat about that.
It's not really my area of expertise or interest, but I'll do my best. Anyway, don't despair about Martin, because we have some very exciting guest presenters coming on the show. And for week one, he's well known for wildlife, action and adventure. I don't think he knows much about
Loan him the book.
I mean, I don't know. I'll ask him. But let's have a visual cue of who I'm talking about. Here he is. It's not Private Pike from Dad's Army. No, it is the one and only Steve Backshall. And we've already set him on a mucky mission in the river.
Yep, there was no chance of Steve sitting on the sofa or the bench. He's following in Martin's wet footsteps down in the brook. Perfect.
Now, as usual, we've got live cameras all over the estate, and already we've got a fabulous clutch of nests to show you. Let's start off with what I think is an adorable nest. It's the little owl nest. Here it is, it's in the barn. Full of character, these birds, so we're hopefully going to see lots of them during the series.
Yeah, we put lots of live cameras out across the estate. We could do, you know, Springwatch without spring. We nearly had to a couple of weeks ago, but we couldn't do it without blue tits. Let's go live to our blue tits nest. Absolutely brimming with a healthy brood of blue tits there. Fantastic. And look, adult comes in. Oh, who's going to get the caterpillar this time? They measure to see which caterpillar, which one's begging the most. And look, there goes the fecal sac. Good to start the series with a fecal sac. Top work. We've also got a marsh tit's nest. We can go live to the marsh tits now. This is great because this will enable us to contrast the behaviour of these two birds. And look, another feed. So the marsh tit adult has come in. This is in a hollow tree, a natural cavity, not a nest box. Top view of the back of a marsh tit's bottom there as it disappears. I mean, that's what you pay your licence fee is for, isn't it? I mean, seriously, we've only just started. You've got a top view of a licence fee.
I love that nest, though. It's really unusual looking, isn't it? And I love this nest as well. It's a regular on Springwatch. It's a wren's nest. It just looks so cosy. Look at those little mouths peeking out All these nests we're going to show you a lot more of during today's 90-minute show, so we'll go back to them later.
If you're one of the 2 or 3 fans of the programme, you'll know that we based ourselves here last spring. We came back for Autumn Watch and for Winter Watch, and we've returned again. We really wanted to get a snapshot of the Sherborne Park estate, use it as a representation of the great British countryside, if you like, to see what prospers, what doesn't, and what's happening here at large. And this is what we've seen over the last few seasons.
When we first came to Sherborne Park Estate last year, spring definitely didn't disappoint. The rolling countryside was teeming with life. In the woodlands were some of our most iconic animal species, hurrying to raise their families. The water meadows were awash with colour, providing a rare habitat for wildlife to thrive. Down by the river, competition was fierce, with winners and losers. And even in the picture-perfect village, spring left its mark.
But before long, spring had run its race. Familiar faces made their exit, and the vivid greens of high summer mellowed into auburn hues of red, orange and gold. As the days drew in, the wildlife left at Sherborne adjusted to the colder months. For the many species of deer here, it was time to search for a mate. And every animal scrambled to make the most of the dwindling food supply.
Soon, the sun set on autumn's reign, and the Cotswolds fell under winter's spell. A thick carpet of snow swept the land, bringing new arrivals in its wake. On frosty mornings, the rivers were serene and peaceful, but at night, the woodlands came to life. Winter's grip lasted long into the new year.
But now that the sun has warmed the land once more, the woodlands are decadent in green and the fields are colourful in bloom. Spring has returned to the Cotswolds. So have we.
Oh, we got lucky, you know. Well, it's a nice evening,
It's
isn't
a
it?
beautiful evening.
It's a nice evening. Spring has finally started. Look, the cow pasties out over
Yeah.
here. The old chestnuts have got mini conkers on already. Things are looking good.
You're in a T-shirt, no jacket on?
Exactly.
Oh, you're a brave
This
man,
time last
you're a
year,
brave
I had
man.
a puffer jacket on to start
And
Springwatch.
thermals, I show that. Now, as you know on Springwatch, we love a bit of drama.
What a couple of old duffers.
We love a bit of jeopardy.
What a couple of old duffers.
And usually that happens on week 2, doesn't it, the drama and the jeopardy? But it's already started, can you believe it? We've had our live cameras on over the weekend, and we've had our cameraman out of work as well, and they've already caught this rather dramatic scene. Now, this fabulous bird is a male sparrowhawk, and you can see that he's caught something, and the eagle-eyed amongst you will see that that's a juvenile starling. He's got the starling in its grip. Starling is actually still alive. You can see the beak moving, but then watch, something happens as it's mantling over that starling. Something chases it off, and look, it's a rabbit. So the sparrowhawk releases the starling, the rabbit sort of chases it, it escapes into the undergrowth. It's still alive, and I reckon it runs away to live another day.
No.
Oh, come on,
No,
let's have a positive start.
No. Well, it was Super Rabbit did quite a good job, but I think it was just a little bit too late for that starling,
Do you
I'm
think
afraid.
so?
I'm afraid so.
Already
I'm afraid
injured.
so. And the other thing is that sparrowhawks are very tenacious. If you sometimes put them off their prey and then back off, they'll come back to it. It's so difficult for them to catch things that once they've got it, they'll come back. I wouldn't mind betting that little sparrowhawk's not sneaking around the corner to grab that.
Oh.
Let's go back live to our blue tits nest, though, where at the moment everything is prospering. And again, one of the adults has come in there, rooting around down in the bottom of the nest, trying to remove those fecal sacs, I imagine, because there are no less than 11 of these chicks in here. In fact, let's see what they've been getting up to. Here's the nest. It's down in the woods. It's in an artificial box that we put up so that we've been able to watch it throughout the course. The adults have been coming in. They've been very diligent, actually, particularly the female, who we think is breeding in her first summer. But they've both been provisioning the young. And in this shot here, you can see the full 11 young, although that one, Michaela, oh, it's not begging, is it? It's looking a little bit weak, maybe a little bit...
Are you being negative again?
I'm just saying.
It's going to be all right. It's just having a little doze.
A little bit runty, that one. And of course, they make a lot of noise when they're being fed by those adults. And this lures in the woodpecker. The great spotted woodpecker's got a keen sense of hearing. Clearly, this bird has identified that there are youngsters inside that box, and it's visited on a couple of occasions.
11 chicks, though. It's a lot of mouths to feed, isn't it? Let's contrast that to our marsh tit nest. Now, this is a first for Springwatch. Here it is live. It's sort of in a, you can see it's in a little hole low down in that tree. That's the nest. Let's have a look at the adult bird. Oh, there we go, we're in it live. And you can see the little chicks in there looking very healthy. But what does a marsh tit look like? Well, let's have a look. This is the adult bird, very similar to a willow tit. In fact, they only realised that they were two species in 1897. There it goes into that little slit in the hole. But then something rather curious happens once the adult flies off. Another bird flies in, and this is a dunnock. And look what it does. It defecates, i.e. it poos, on the entrance of that nest hole. The willow tit goes in, feeds the chicks, comes out, obviously smells something rather unsavoury and gets rid of the object. It's a quite odd behaviour, that, isn't it? Why do you think it did it?
Not for a dunnock. Every time I open my kitchen door, you know, in the dunnock comes, poos on the mat, I have to go over, flick it out.
Flick it off.
It is unusual. I think it was purely by accident, but what wasn't an accident was the marsh tit removing the poo. They remove the faecal sats. We've already seen the blue tits doing that at the very top of the programme. They take them away so that the smell and the sight of them doesn't attract predators. And of course that, right outside the hole, is a dead giveaway for things that are looking for a nest.
It's not
so
nice.
That's why it removed it. It wasn't its own poo, but that doesn't really matter.
I'm going to remove myself now because I'm going to head down to the river and see Steve, so I'll see you later.
OK, good luck with that. Now, we're based here at Sherborne. It's a fantastic place, plenty of wildlife, of course, but we don't want just to cover spring here. We want to look at spring across the whole of the UK. So here's a taster of what's coming up in our series. Yes! I knew it.
Beautiful,
Wow.
beautiful. These are some of my favourite flowers, lords and ladies.
Oh, it's always a treat to see them, isn't it?
She's going in the wrong direction. I hate to tell you this.
No. I think she just doesn't like your ears.
Sunset of a puffin, some fantastic wildlife coming up, and a few odd anatomical anomalies on the top of Michaela's ears as well. Absolutely superb. One thing though, bit of geography. Where are we? Where is Sherborne? Here we are. We're down here in Gloucestershire, as you can see there. Sort of west central. Where's Gillian though? Well, she's moved 750 miles way north of Scotland to the Shetland Isles. It's a wonderful place for wildlife up there. So Gillian, what have you got coming up for us in this series?
Welcome to the Shetlands. We're here to follow spring as it unfolds in Britain's most northern islands. Now, to put that into perspective, we're on the same latitude as the southern tip of Greenland, or in other words, we're closer to Oslo than we are to London. Now, over the course of the coming week, we're going to be working our way up from the south of the island all the way to the very, very north of the island. And we're going to do that, of course, to bring you the very best of the wildlife that Shetland has to offer. Shetland. Its 300 islands form a coastline stretching over 1,500 miles. A remote sanctuary for elusive creatures. And hiding a wild interior. a land of just 20,000 people, but over 1 million seabirds. Majestic, absolutely majestic. Now, we are so far north that, yes, there are some familiar species that you'd see back on mainland, but here there's some real rarities and also some surprising visitors. Just a few weeks ago, a vagrant showed up. Now, this is a seal, but it's not one of our residents. It's not a common or a grey seal. The whiskers kind of give it away. This is a bearded seal. It's an animal that's normally associated with the high Arctic, with the Arctic Ocean, but here it showed up in one of the busiest harbours right here in Shetland. Now, this isn't a one-off. There, as far as best we can tell, there are about 13 records of bearded seals here in the Shetlands. But there is an Arctic visitor that comes here every single year without fail. And where we are today, which is at the RSPB Reserve at Somber Head, this is one of the best places to see this animal, and it's one of Britain's biggest predators. And of course, I'm talking about orcas. Now, they show up here every spring like clockwork, as if from nowhere. They come here in these big family groups. These animals work together to hunt as a team. And what they're coming here for is food. And this is it. These are common seals, and at this time of year, they're pupping. And this is what the orcas are after. The orcas will follow the shoreline. They hug that shoreline in the hope of flushing out seals. And if you look really carefully here, off it goes. That seal has a really lucky escape. Now, a few weeks ago, just where off this headland, a pod of orcas was spotted just a few hundred meters off. Now, I'd be quite excited about this normally, but this morning we had some even more exciting news. There's been a pod of orcas that's been spotted just 20 miles east of the Shetlands, and they are heading here. Now, you bet we're keeping a very, very close eye on this, because they could show up absolutely anywhere around the islands, just like here. Now, this is, again, a very busy part of the island, and as you can see, when the orcas show up, it causes quite a stir. Now, there's this really amazing network of spotters, of wildlife enthusiasts, and with the help of social media, what they do is they gather all the reports of sightings and photographs, and it's not just a bit of fun. This is actually helping to solve the mystery of where these orcas come from. Now, orcas have these great big dorsal fins, and individuals can be identified by these unique notches and marks on their fins, just like this one here. Now, this is a female called Musa. Musa is a legendary female. She was first spotted here 10 years ago, and you can see that notch in her fin. Now, this photo was taken in Shetland. This is another photo of Musa. Again, you can see that notch, but this is almost 800 miles away in Iceland. Now, this is quite surprising, and scientists are still working to piece together what exactly is going on. But the idea at the moment is that the orcas head to Iceland in the autumn, in the winter, where they feed on herring. In the spring, they head south and they change their feeding behavior to be able to hunt seals. Now, we know there's a pod heading this way. 20 miles away, last sighting. We're sure they're heading here for the food, so of course we're going to be keeping an eye on that tonight and for the rest of the week. But later on in the show, we're going to be back here for another amazing Shetland wildlife spectacle, where we're going to be meeting longwees, marlies and Tammy Nories. Intrigued, Michaela?
I certainly am intrigued, Gillian, and I think it's amazing that you've got orca up there. It's always exciting to have orca wherever you are. Now, we promised you adventure, we promised you excitement, we promised you surprises, and we've got all that in this fabulous package in the water. It's Steve Backshall.
I've never
Great
been
to have you on
described
the
as a
show.
fabulous package
Oh,
before. I quite like that.
Steve. Now, Steve, we know you for doing, outrageously adventurous things. Diving into caves to look for wildlife, going to the top of the mountains, kayaking around the world. And we've really pushed out the health and safety envelope here by putting you waist deep in the river. Can you handle it?
Michaela, I am waist deep in mud.
You're right.
Seriously, I can't move a foot in either direction right now. It's good mud though. It's mud that's full of life, which is a start. But seriously, don't expect me to go anywhere quick.
You love rivers though, don't you?
I do actually. My wife Helen and I, for the last year, we've been living in a houseboat on the River Thames, and it's great. I know it sounds obvious, but you are totally immersed in the wildlife. You see everything evolving around you. In the houseboat, you open the kitchen door and you have ducks coming to be fed. We have things like these banded demoiselles, and right now just this enormous, almost plague of mayflies, which are there in such enormous numbers it's almost impossible to comprehend. It's one of the great spectacles in nature, and it's actually happening right around us, right here on Sherborne Brook.
They're all going over your head at the moment.
They are.
Actually, lots of things flying over your head.
I find myself just wanting to swat them, and you think you mustn't, you've got to protect the wildlife. But Sherborne Brook itself actually is a glorious little stretch of water. If you see it from the air, you can see all these wonderful aquatic plants that are clogged in here in this little eddy coming up to the weir. But it's filtered through amazing Cotswold limestone. It's really glorious and clear and pure. It's not polluted. So it has a wonderful array of life and lots of different habitats as well. And each one of those habitats has a different kind of wildlife, and that's what I'm hoping to show you. Some of them are so odd and so bizarre. So I've been in here for quite a while now, fishing around in the mud, and some of the critters I've been finding are just pure aliens. Things like this pond hydra here, which is kind of like the freshwater equivalent of a soft coral, and there's so much about their biology that's just incredible. These gamma shrimp are everywhere, and then all kinds of weird, bizarre aquatic larvae, like this caseless caddisfly larvae. I mean, seriously, most of these things look like being more at home in a horror movie than in one of our own streams.
They are incredibly alien looking, aren't they? Well,
Yeah.
I'm going to let you get on. You go off with your net and see what you can find.
I'll just stay here with it.
Just push your net around. We'll come back to you later. And as Steve said, it looks really peaceful and tranquil, this water, doesn't it? But underneath the surface, it's an alien world, and there are all sorts of dramas going on.
On a warm spring day, our freshwater rivers and ponds are a haven of peace and tranquility. But a dip below the waterline reveals a cast of aquatic characters, engaged in a frantic daily struggle for survival. Found in nearly half of all freshwater rivers and ponds, this is a mayfly larva. Laid as an egg last year, this small nymph spends its time feasting on algae. Not much longer than the tip of your finger, its olive body is soft and quite defenceless. Paired feathery sets of gills extract oxygen from the water, and it uses a mixture of camouflage and speed to stay safe. Another larva lurking within the detritus on the bottom is a caddisfly. Without the speed of the mayfly, it builds itself a casing of scraps to protect and camouflage itself as it bumbles about in the sediment. Silk glands around the mouth lash and bind the fragments together. But an armoured backpack isn't the mayfly nymph's style. It prefers to be fleet of foot. At this time of year, there's a race to feed and grow. The rule of the food chain is to eat or be eaten. And these soft, defenceless nymphs are snack size for all. Tiny trout fry are voracious and will snap at anything that comes too close. Small water fleas make a good snack, but they also have eyes for something meatier. Luckily, this mayfly larva freezes and slips under the radar. But there are other hungry residents. And this monster has locked onto its target. This skulking hulk of a nymph is in fact a dragonfly larva. One of the hardiest hunters down here. Dragonfly larvae take up to 5 years to develop, stalking the shallows, lunging with their deadly mouthparts at anything within reach. The mayfly needs to keep its wits about it. And its speed comes to the rescue this time. But not all are so lucky. But even the dominant dragonfly has to be wary around the growing trout. In the face of all these dangers, this mayfly is still at large. And as the spring warms the water, it's time for her and the other survivors to make their way to the surface to take their place in a magical transformation. Ponds and rivers come alive as a host of different mayflies hatch en masse to court in the air. It's a bonanza for any number of predators. But the sheer weight of the mayfly hatch gives every individual a fighting chance in the mating lottery. A lucky few make it to breed and start the cycle all over again.
The mayfly provide an extraordinary spectacle, but when it comes to those nymphs, for me, nothing beats the dragonfly nymph. Can you imagine a mouth like that?
I'd be so
You can
cool.
extend it like that, you know.
Yeah, you'd be in the cake shop.
Yeah.
You'd be
Yeah.
like, carrot cake,
Yeah.
that's mine,
Black
thanks.
Moscato, red velvet. Thank
It's
you
so
very
handy,
much.
wouldn't it?
Yeah, before they cashiers could even, you know,
Cash up.
cash up, you'd be munching it.
Now, on Springwatch, we don't like to give up. Once we set ourselves a challenge, we like to see it all the way through. And when we were here last year on Springwatch, we wanted to get to know the resident badgers. Well, quite frankly, we failed, didn't we?
Didn't do very well, did we, to be honest, last
They
year?
didn't show up on our cameras, but we weren't going to give up, so we continued to try and follow them in Autumn Watch. Didn't do so well there either, but by Winter Watch, we'd collared 3 individuals and we named them after pop stars. So one we named after Mark Almond, and he was really pleased, wasn't he? Because he watches the show.
He tweeted in and said it was a great honour to have a badger named after him. Top bloke, Mark Almond.
We named one after Kate Bush. She didn't.
Still
tweet
haven't
in.
heard, Kate.
I'm not sure she does social media.
There's
or
still
watches the
time,
show.
Kate, if you want to acknowledge the fact that we have credited you by naming a badger after you. I mean, of all the accolades you've received, just saying.
And the 3rd badger we named in honour of David Bowie. So obviously he's not.
He's not been in touch either, no.
tweeting, but I'm sure he would be really honoured to have a badger named after
He's a
him.
quirky bloke. I think he'd go for it.
So we've got our 3 badgers collared. Did we see them? Well, let's have a look. This is what we saw over Winter Watch. That was David Bowie. We didn't see very much of him. He was somewhat absent. Kate Bush, well, she was as elusive as the pop star herself, so she didn't really star very much. It was Mark Almond. he wasn't tainted by his badger co-star shyness. We saw lots of him. In fact, he became the star of the badger set. We saw lots of this, lots of play fighting.
That's not play fighting, that's non-stop erotic cabaret.
Is that what you think it is? Well, at the end of Winter Watch, though, we did see this. It got into a serious fight, and we saw Mark limping off. Our cameras then went off. We lost transmission of his collar, so we were a little bit worried about what had happened to Mark. So we get here for Springwatch this time. Our cameras go back up. This is what we've seen. Here he is. It's Mark. He's looking good. Is he limping? The good news is, no, he's not. He's looking really healthy. And the even better news is, there are 2 cubs with him. In fact, we've spotted 5 individuals around this set with Mark. Mark, the 2 cubs, a female,
males, isn't it?
And an unidentified adult as well. They've been doing lots of this, lots of grooming each other, lots of play fighting. We've been getting really good glimpses of Mark and his family. So, you know, we succeeded. I mean, don't give up. When at first you don't succeed, try again. That's what my mother always taught me. And we tried again, and we got to know Mark at least.
Page 1 of badger watching. That's what it says on page 1 of badger watching. Exactly what your mother said. I'll tell you what, let's go live to our badger set now. You know, there's an outside chance they will make daylight emergences at this time of year. And as you can see from that picture, it's a very active set. Lots of entrances, lots of soil that's been turfed out there. And the good thing, Michaela, is that the dense canopy above it means there's not a lot of understory there, things like nettles or bracken, which means that when the badgers do come out, we should be able to get a cracking view of them. But at the moment, I'm afraid we might just be a little bit early tonight. But it's worth having a look, isn't it? Now, here's a map of where our badgers were living. So these are the animals that we collared, and they were collared under licence with Dr. Dawn Scott from the University of Brighton. And what we wanted to find out is how these animals were partitioning the resources here, how they were using the land at Sherborne. So David was up in this piece of woodland, so that's about, I don't know, a kilometre away behind us here. Kate was on the other side of the road, actually over here beyond our studio, and Mark just beneath her in a wood. Now, all of those collars at the moment have stopped transmitting, but they don't stay on the badger. A little signal triggers them to pop off so they can be recovered, of course. New batteries go in, put the collar back on should you choose to do so. But what did we learn whilst they were transmitting? Well, here's a map of all of the traces that we got from David. So you can see that David was roaming over quite a large area. In fact, in the winter, he went all the way down here to the village, possibly after food when times were tough, and that's about 980 metres all the way down here from the centre of his set. Kate, she was up here. She didn't move too much around. She spent quite a bit of time on the open ground, and when we looked at the fields here, we found that they were quite rough, overgrown, probably full of invertebrates, so she was doing quite well on the outside. Mark, on the other hand, the pink dots here, he spends quite a bit more of his time in the woodland, foraging in that woodland there. And look, you know, Michaela, there's a little bit of overlap between Mark and Kate, which is interesting, because typically badgers are very strictly territorial. So that's a brief glimpse of the data. We'll come back to that a bit later in the series for some more.
Do you think this was a hill? Maybe they were both running up that hill. Maybe Kate was running up that hill. Anyway, from badgers in the Gloucestershire countryside, let's go west to some coastline serenity in a very beautiful part of Wales.
Jutting out from the coast of South Wales is the Gower Peninsula. These 19 breathtaking miles were Britain's first designated area of outstanding natural beauty. And it's easy to see why. Surrounded by the sea on 3 sides, it's a place of extremes. Its jagged rocks, rugged cliffs, and secluded beaches sculpted by the relentless motion of the crashing waves. But what is extreme to human eyes looks like home to others. And every spring, these dramatic cliffs become a high-rise habitat for a variety of wildlife. First to stake their claim are the ravens. With a wingspan of up to 1.5 meters, they're the largest member of the crow family and command the very best territory. It's late March, and on a south-facing ledge tucked away in a gully, a female is sitting on a ragged nest of sticks. Ravens are faithful birds pairing for life, and the female will incubate whilst the male seeks food for both of them. She's been here nearly a month, sitting tight through the topsy-turvy weather. But a call from her partner draws her from the nest to feed, revealing 4 tiny chicks just a few days old. Blind and helpless, the chicks vary in size and strength, and the next few weeks will be crucial for these new residents of the high-rise. But the Gower offers more than just top-floor tenancies. The hardy low-level gorse provides thick cover and prickly privacy for other occupants of the peninsula. Stone chats and linnets are common in the scrub. But hidden in the gorse, a much rarer bird has also made a home. The spring warmth has coaxed a male Dartford warbler onto a rooftop perch, proclaiming his territory in a confident chorus. Unlike most species of warbler which migrate south in winter, the Dartford is a resident. Warmth-loving birds, the Gower is at the very northern limit of their range, and a cold winter can wipe out whole populations. So this male has beaten the odds this year, battling through the cold to sing his springtime song. But whether any females have made it through to answer his call remains to be seen. Back at the raven's nest, the chicks are now around 4 days old. An adult comes back with a meal for the hungry horde. It's the male, which is only revealed when his smaller partner arrives back too. Over the next few hours, the parents return time and time again with food. A regurgitated recipe scavenged from the cliff tops. With a sparse covering of down, the chicks still need their mother's warmth to survive. And as the temperature drops, it's time to settle down to brood. Nearby, a rare relative is also in the neighbourhood. The chough. Corvid cousins of the ravens, they're only found along the wilder coastlines of Western Britain. So this is their home turf. Their nesting season is yet to start, so for now, they gather on the Gower in small feeding flocks. The short, grazed turf along the cliff tops provides the perfect foraging grounds for these birds. Probing just below the surface, they use their curved, fine-tipped beaks to search for grubs and other invertebrates. Now 10 days old, all 4 raven chicks are doing well. Most ravens only manage to get 3 chicks to maturity. But so far, these parents seem to be on a roll, returning home regularly to feed all 4 youngsters. Whether they can keep it up is another story. It'll be at least a month before the chicks are ready to fledge. And in the coming weeks, the cliffs will start to fill up with noisy neighbours, each scrabbling for a foothold in this clifftop high-rise home.
We'll be catching up with their avian antics tomorrow and throughout the week. But right now, here in Shetland, in the last 10 minutes, the weather has gone from glorious sunshine to the sea mist, the haar, they call it here, that's rolling in. And it's not just the weather that's changing, it's a changing of the guards. From fulmars flying around, I'm now surrounded by puffins. And I'm on this cliff here where behind me is a globally important wildlife location. The sea cliff back there is full of all sorts of nesting seabirds. And the puffins, the fulmars, are all out there. Just below me, right down there, are guillemots. There's another species that's found here. There are over 7,000 of these birds. Now you can see them there. They are tightly packed in like sardines. Guillemots are like the penguins of the Northern Hemisphere. They're actually members of the auk family, and they have the smallest nesting site compared to their body size of any bird. They just need a beak's length around them. It's quite incredible. So now let's take a look at what other species we have nesting along these sea cliffs in the fog. Now, there we have the fulmars. Now these are called marlies over here. The Shetlanders all have names for each of these birds. The shags are called scarfs. Spring comes a little bit later here in the Shetlands, so we're still seeing a lot of nesting behavior going on, nest building behavior. Now these are razorbills called sea craws over here. Also members of the auk family, and you can see those bills where they get their name, those chunky razor-like bills. Now these are kittiwakes, delicate gulls with a very, very piercing call. And of course, everyone's favorite, the puffins. And they've been coming in here. We haven't seen them all day, but they've been coming in here now, and they favor these grassy ledges here where their burrows, where they nest in their burrows. Now, all the birds, no matter what species, are here for one reason, and that's to nest. They may feed out at sea, but this is where they lay their eggs. However, they still have to return out there in the gloom and the mist in order to feed. Now, over the years, tracking devices have been put to various species, and scientists have started to find some really interesting things about these birds. Now, take guillemots, for example. They make these incredible foraging trips of 37.8 kilometers on average, but they can go as far as 120 kilometers on a single foraging trip. Now, on Shetland, a puffin was tagged and was found to have flown a round trip, 800 kilometers. Now, if you think about these foraging trips, it's like their work, and the journey out there is the commute. So these are quite incredible journeys, especially when you think that they're under their own steam. Now, the fulmars take this to a whole new level. A single female flew a round trip of 5,000 kilometers to the mid-Atlantic ridge. A male fulmar did a similar journey to the exact same spot, so scientists are quite convinced that these were foraging trips. Now, these birds are amazing that they can do these long journeys, but once their chicks have hatched, they really can't leave them for long, and they're confined to feeding on offshore waters. And food availability and abundance is absolutely crucial in these offshore waters. Now, in recent decades, seabirds have really been struggling. Their numbers have been plummeting. And later on in the show, we're going to meet a scientist who's undertaking a mind-blowing nationwide census to get a full picture of what's happening to these seabirds. And you will find out how you can get involved. For now, let's go find out what Steve is up to.
Well, I'm still here on Sherborne Brook as the last few rays of a glorious amber sun set behind me, setting up a wonderful dusk. I mean, seriously, this looks like a postcard for Visit Britain, doesn't it? It's absolutely glorious. And I am entrenched in what would have to be one of the most immersive marathon pond dips in human history. If you thought pond dipping was just for kids, think again. And the stuff we're finding here is absolutely wonderful. I mean, this kind of takes me back to my childhood. Almost every single sweep of the net is coming up with scores and scores of, well, I've got them here in a jam jar, sticklebacks, 3-spine sticklebacks. Aren't they glorious? When we find something good, we've been whisking it away to our macro studio to get some decent shots of it. We've got some lovely close-up shots. Sadly, I've not managed to yet find any of the males with the glorious blush of their full breeding colours. But what we have been getting absolutely loads of is these tiny little insects. Kind of looks like a little bundle of twigs, but these are actually caddisfly larvae. And they're here in an enormous abundance. Each different species will encase itself in a kind of sleeping bag of silk and then encrust that with bits of stick, bits of twig. It can be sand, it can be gravel. This one, though, particularly caught my attention because it has encrusted itself in ram's horn snails. And if you look closely, you can see that some of them still have the living snail inside of them. Can you imagine that? You're there in your home and someone comes away and cements you into their caravan and then moves away with you. That would be surprising, to say the least. But the real king of the river flies that are emerging at the moment is the mayfly. So those will spend the majority of their lives as nymphs. We've got some shots of them here as the youngsters under the water, aquatic larvae. And they could live as much as 2 years in this form, growing slowly, eating, until now, until this time of year, when one of the grandest spectacles you will ever see takes place, the emergence of the mayflies as adults. And it's happening around me right now. I can see all these wonderful little forms. We've got actually the largest species in the UK flying right alongside me here. They're really rather wonderful, but the most remarkable thing about them is that they come out of the water, they emerge from their larval form, and then they turn into a flying insect called a dun. And they fly into the vegetation at the side of the river, and then they molt again. They're the only insect that does this to emerge as their sexual form, the spinner, which is more colourful, it's brighter. They then come back to the water. What you might see around me is that some of these insects are bouncing up and down. Those are the males, and they're doing that to attract the females. This is a spectacle that's been going on for at least 300 million years, since long before the time of the dinosaurs. And you can see the abundance around me now. There's one just emerged right alongside me and is flapping past my eyes. And obviously when you have this kind of overabundance of protein, there are going to be lots and lots of animals that take advantage of that. So we're seeing all kinds of creatures feasting on the river flies, particularly the mayflies. Here you can see they're almost like backlit pixies or fairies floating over the surface of the water there. There's just, in some cases, in some parts of the world, these are so abundant, they need snowplows to get rid of the mayflies. Here we have things like moorhens and trout lashing up to the surface there to snatch them just as they're ready to emerge. And then other insects like damselflies, demoiselles, and dragonflies as well. But because there are so many of them, and this is such a fabulous source of potential protein, there are other creatures that feast on the mayflies that are perhaps not what you'd expect. In fact, over the river, the last 24 hours, we've been seeing a bird of prey that you wouldn't expect, a kestrel, feeding mid-air on the mayflies. So it's acting exactly as you would expect a hobby to do. Another falcon which has long, thin, whippy wings and is adapted to this kind of feeding, catching them in its talons on the wing, transferring them to the beak. But this is a kestrel. This is a kestrel that specialises in feeding on small mammals on the ground. That's what it's adapted to do, what it's evolved to do. But when you have this kind of bounty at your disposal, it's perhaps inevitable that you would do anything to take advantage of it. And here we're seeing fabulous sights. We've seen all kinds of birds feeding on the mayflies. Not surprising, really. And really, I think you've got to say, Chris and Michaela, an awful lot of the abundance that we see here in spring is due to what we find beneath the water at Sherborne Brook.
Absolutely right, absolutely right. And the abundance is extraordinary. We calculated today that if there were a lot of those mayfly, maximum numbers of them in that river, in 1 square kilometre of river, which would be just about from where Steve is down to our boat shed, every year 1,808 tonnes, yes, tonnes,
Seriously?
tonnes of mayfly could emerge from the water there.
Wow.
It's not surprising birds like the kestrel have taken them. That amount of food, it's extraordinary.
Fantastic to see the kestrel come down and catch
I've seen
one
them
so
taking fox
beautifully
moths like that before, but as Steve says, typically that is the behaviour of the hobby, not the kestrel.
Of course, it's not just kestrels, though, as Steve said. All the birds on the river that eat mayflies will make the most of any emergence. And we've got a couple of nests with live cameras on that aren't very far away from where Steve is. They're just by the boathouse. One of them is the wren that we showed you earlier. Here's the wren nest live with, oh, those little faces sticking out. Such a cosy nest. I mean, they really look like they're in a nice, thick, cosy duvet ready for
Well, it's an
birds, don't
expandable
they?
nest, isn't it? It's a little dome, and as the brood gets bigger, it just grows and grows and grows and accommodates the space.
You can only see 4 little faces, oh, 5 maybe. 5 little faces per, oh, 1, yeah. Let's have a look though at the adult coming in, because they've really been feeding these chicks well. There's the nest, and there's the adult. What's it got in its mouth? Yes, it's got a mayfly. As I say, this wren is going to be making the most of any mayfly emergence. and those chicks will very greedily guzzle it down. And as I say, if you look closely, it's difficult to know just how many chicks are in there, but we have spotted 6. But there could be more, because as you say, the nest expands and there could be quite a few more in there.
Yeah, sometimes they're up to 8, even more eggs on occasion, so we don't know at the moment. There's another nest down in the woods quite close to the wren that we've been watching over the course of the weekend. We can't go to it live because there's been some extraordinary behaviour there. It's the nest of a tree creeper. So they make their nest behind loose bark, typically on dead trees like this one. There's the tree creeper on the tree opposite, and it hops over, in fact 2 of them do, with food, and the nest, which is made of grass lined with hair and feathers, and again a clutch of 5 or 6 eggs would have been laid in it. Young have hatched, they're feeding them there, but then here we are, look, in they go. So, happy little tree creeper's nest, everything going well for them of course, but there's always a predator around the corner, particularly one with keen hearing. And on this occasion, it's the great spotted woodpecker again. So we spotted this on the camera that was looking at the tree creepers. Look what the tree creepers do when they see the woodpeckers there. This is amazing. They freeze. They don't want to give their whereabouts away in case it leads the woodpecker to their nest. And they just sit there motionless until the woodpecker leaves and they feel confident that they can go back to that nest. But I'm afraid the ploy didn't work, because shortly after that the woodpecker probably heard the youngsters calling as the adults were approaching with food, and it goes in and makes mincemeat of the bark that's protecting that nest, hammering away on the outside. The tree creeper is a much smaller bird. It doesn't have the courage or capacity to come in and swoop and drive off that woodpecker. I'm afraid all it can do is watch this from the other tree. And woodpeckers are terribly diligent. It's flown off on this occasion, but they don't forget. They've got a good memory. They know that there's food there. So once again, the tree creepers are going in, providing food. It's not long before the woodpecker comes back. And on this occasion, it really gets stuck in to the nest. Hammers through the bark until you can see the nest material there that it's pulling out. We didn't know how many young tree creepers were in this nest. We couldn't see them. But look, the woodpecker's having a look round. It can sense that something's going on, and then it's really quick because a tree creeper tries to escape from the top of the bark, but the woodpecker is too quick. It takes it, and that's the last we saw of it.
It's such a shame, isn't it? Because you know, we were really looking forward to seeing those tree creepers come out, and we thought that they would fledge quite soon.
Yep.
Do you think, though, it got one? Do you think maybe the others, there might have been others in there that maybe escaped?
Only if Super Rabbit was around. No, actually, I do think there might have been a chance, because one of the strategies that young birds do use when they're attacked like that is to scatter. And it may well be that whilst we were watching the woodpecker taking that one youngster, the others scattered. It would have been unlikely to have just one young tree creeper in there. As I say, their clutches are 5 or 6. I think the rest scattered into the vegetation. They would then call to the adults, and there's a good chance they're still being provisioned with food at the moment.
And of course, that woodpecker has chicks of its own to
Yeah,
feed.
we can't demonise the woodpecker. They're, you know, as you say, they've got a brood somewhere that's hungry. They need to feed them, and they eat meat and not little spiders like the tree creepers like to favour.
Chris, it's been a beautiful evening this evening. It's been a lovely day. In fact, it almost feels like summer, doesn't it? But I think all of us know that this spring has been a little strange. It's been confusing for the wildlife, and it's been confusing for us. So to give us a little bit of clarity, here's Nick Miller with an explanation on what exactly has been going on this spring.
Yes, just when you thought the great British spring had become all cosy and comfortable, the beast from the east arrived. March, the official start of spring, but we were plunged right back into winter up and down the UK as the beast brought snow and bitter winds, and Storm Emma raged in. Now, temperatures dropped as low as -11 around the Murray Firth. There was a wind gust in Cumbria of 84 miles per hour, and at one stage you could measure a snow depth of 57 centimetres at Little Rissington in Gloucestershire, just down the road from Sherborne. It was our wildlife who bore the brunt of the beast. The extreme weather forced our resident birds to alter their behaviour, and species seldom seen sought sanctuary in our homes. More than 3 times the average number of redwings and fieldfares were spotted.
We're being attacked by fieldfare. Never had fieldfare in the garden.
Snow-covered ground meant foraging in the countryside for soil invertebrates was almost impossible, so these two species turned to garden feeders. An even more unusual species was spotted soon after the first bout of snowfall. It was the first time an Arctic snowy owl had been seen in Norfolk in almost 30 years. But perhaps the greatest impact on wildlife was felt along the coastline. A great tragedy struck the east coast as thousands of dead crustaceans were washed ashore and scattered across beaches, reaching a foot deep in places. Over just a few days, it was estimated that around 25,000 lobsters were rescued and returned to the sea. The timing of the beast from the east couldn't have been more impactful. It struck right at the end of winter, when food resources were at their lowest, animals were just waking up from hibernation, and the first flowers were beginning to bloom. But our resilient wildlife seemed to plough on, and after that frozen March, by April the sun had reappeared and the temperature was soaring, 29.1 in London on the 19th. That was the highest April temperature since 1949, and the early May bank holiday was the hottest on record. And relax. Spring had finally sprung, but for our wildlife, there was no time to waste. It was full steam ahead to make up for lost ground. Spring 2018 was back on.
It's back on, but it's still been a bit muddled, hasn't it? I mean, we had lightning storms a couple of days ago, floods, it's been boiling hot in certain places today. So it's still quite a muddled spring, but, you know, will the wildlife catch up?
Well, you say that. I mean, it's interesting here, isn't it? This time last year when we arrived at Sherborne, we had barn owls with young in the nest. Now we've got barn owls paired up in 3 nest boxes, but without even any eggs. Our swallows here last year, we were watching them, we had cameras on the nest. Swallows are here, but there's not a single active nest. And swifts, which are one of the last birds to arrive in spring, well, if they don't turn up in the next couple of days and get started, then it's going to be too late for them, because by the time they've got their young, they're going to miss the abundance of food that they require to rear those. So I think that this spring's unusual weather is going to have a significant effect. But we in the UK are very good at measuring this. For a long time, hundreds of years in fact, going back to the 1700s, people have been noting the first breaking of buds on the oak tree, the first swallow, the first cuckoo, all of these sorts of things. It's a science called phenology. So let's contrast this year with last year. We asked the Woodland Trust and the BTO for some data. First up then, bluebells. Now, bluebells produce a show that we love to see every spring. What happened this year? Well, they were 39 days late. Last year, the first one was seen on the 9th of February. This year, the 20th of March.
Horse chestnut's been very similar. I mean, we've got a horse chestnut right behind us here. That was also late by a month, 32 days later than last year. March the 20th, first flowers were seen this year, April the 20th.
What about, you know, butterflies? Orange tip, one of those butterflies, a real spring-like, you know, spring speciality. This year, rather like the bluebells, 39 days late. First seen last year on the 4th of March, this year the 11th of April.
And the one everybody's been talking about is swallows. Everyone's been saying, where are the swallows? The reason you haven't seen them is because they've been 65 days later than last year. Last year, 27th of January. This year, April the 1st. That's
65
extraordinary,
days.
Isn't it?
65 days. Bear in mind, that's not just about weather in the UK. Swallows weren't here when we were having all of that turbulent weather. They were further south. What we think in the case of swallows is that there's been bad weather south of the Sahara, and this has been holding up a lot of those sub-Saharan migrants coming back to the UK. Bear in mind that we're talking about weather here, and of course weather can have often profound effects locally on wildlife populations, but when you're considering the whole species, we're far more interested in climate. That's long-term weather trends, and in that case we're looking at increases in temperature, increases in rainfall, and increases in things like, you know, severe storm events, and that does have an effect on our wildlife, and we're measuring it in our lifetimes. I've got a map here which shows the distribution distribution of the comma butterfly. Now, in the 1930s, it was basically just living in this area of the Midlands. By the 70s through to the 80s, it was down here. But now I can move this wonderful three-dimensional butterfly all the way up here. Because yes, by 2014, the comma butterfly had spread from the south of England all the way through to Scotland. And we think that this is a direct result of climate change. And it's only one of a number of species which are showing quite profound changes in their distribution, their population and their range due to climate.
And in fact, all those results have shown that every decade, spring moves forward about 2.5 days.
Which means that if we were to live quite a long time, we could end up making the show at Christmas.
Something like that, yeah. Now, seasonal changes can be challenging, but they can also be very inspiring. And cameraman Yuzuru Masuda is showing us his favourite wildlife spot in London that definitely inspires him as the season changes from winter to spring.
My name is Yuzuru. I'm a musician, photographer and wildlife filmmaker. My passion for natural history started at the very early age. I left Japan to come to the UK when I was 22 years old. I was looking for new experiences in life. Richmond Park is my favorite place in London for filming wildlife. Every morning that I visit, it presents itself completely differently. That excitement keeps me going back. Winter is very beautiful. Although there's not much color, all the brackens gone brown and dried. But on a cold morning, the vapors over the lake can create very magical scene. The frosted grass will shimmer with the rising sun. In February, on a very cold morning, I discovered a family of Egyptian geese just eating the frosted grass. Their innocent expression also contained very brave characters, and determination to survive in that season was quite inspiring. Spring is my favorite season. The speed of the transformation as it gets warmer is incredible. I'll start seeing greens in the trees, from the bare branch to light green to much stronger green. And now if I think of music, I can only think the nature. The nature has its own rhythms, but it's never perfect, and it's never square. And the color of the nature and the tone of the seasons can all be expressed with notes. Kestrel to me is like a flute or recorder. Their movement is fast, and they're more melodic. Egyptian geese definitely trumpet. Mallard ducks could be also trumpet. Whereas the deers, their bellowing sound is very primitive and low. It's more like a tuba. I'm the happiest when I'm in the nature. I feel totally one with myself.
I love Richmond Park. It's a real little oasis, isn't it, in a concrete jungle. And I used to go there a lot as a little girl with my pigtails, and I used to go in the park, watch the deer, do a bit of rounders, have a picnic. Those were the days, eh, Chris? Those were the days.
Well, there might have been few. I'm rather pleased that I wasn't there playing rounders. I'd have been looking at the deer. It's one of the best places in the country to see deer rutting, actually. In that film, you would have noticed a couple of non-native species. There were Egyptian geese, and there were also the ring-necked parakeets. Now, we have quite an arbitrary attitude to these animals, which have been either accidentally or deliberately introduced to the UK. Some of them we really don't like, grey squirrels, American mink, for good reason, of course. Others we kind of tolerate, and one of those is the little owl. Now, little owls are not a native species, but they're very much loved in the UK. In fact, there are proactive conservation policies in place to keep them here. But they were introduced in the 1700s, first bred in 1879, and then they spread very rapidly. And by the 1930s, there were little owls over much of England. These are living here on the Sherborne Park estate. It's a pair there together. There are hole nesting species. They like to nest in hollow trees, but they'll also go into buildings as well. And they're very tolerant of disturbance from man. It's the breeding season, as you can see. Although this male doesn't approach it with a great deal of gusto. He seems sort of partially interested in starting a clutch. But, well, maybe not. Oh, yeah, okay. Come on then, let's get on with it. Maybe he just doesn't fancy rearing somewhere between 5 and 7 youngsters. I know exactly how he feels. But look at this, Michaela. They are a charming, rotund, pretty, cutesy little owl. And I think that's why probably loads of people like them.
I like them. They are adorable. And we're very lucky to have a pair nesting right behind us in this barn here, just under the eaves. Let's have a look at them live. So you can see, if we go right in, you can see exactly where I'm talking about. This seems to be the live view we're getting quite a lot of.
We've had the marsh tit's arse, and now we've got the little owl's arse.
But this is what we saw just a couple of minutes ago on this camera during the live programme. And look, there are the little chicks. There are 3 chicks in there. They're absolutely tiny. Let's have a look at what we've seen over the last couple of days. Again, this is just showing you exactly where that nest is. Oh, it's that same view again. That's a popular view, that one, isn't it?
But
here comes the male.
With a worm.
And in fact, the male is doing most of the hunting, most of the provisioning, bringing in lots of different foods, lots of worms. On Sunday when it was raining, we noticed. Frogs, moths as well. And there you can see those chicks again. You can only see 2 there. But if you look very closely, you can see that that female is, in fact, feeding a 3rd chick. So we know that there are 3 chicks there. As I say, they're absolutely adorable little birds, and they're usually full of character. And the amazing thing is they're just not bothered by us being here at all, are they?
No, they're very tolerant of humans. You'll often find them in old industrial sites, scrapyards, farmyards, all that sort of thing. And yeah, they are quite tolerant, which is a good thing. Time to go back to the brook, though, to Steve, who's up to his something or others in freezing cold water, trying to find something bigger than a caddisfly larva.
Why does it always have to be about size? Seriously. I mean, I am still here in the brook. I'm about 1 kilometre further downstream, just below a weir, and it's a very, very different habitat. So instead of having a deep, muddy bottom, instead it's a gravel bottom. And this is a perfect habitat for one of our favourite fish, the brown trout. Now, I can't see it around me right now, but we have got some great shots of them over the last couple of days. And this is our own native species of trout. They're a rather glorious butterscotch colour with all of those wonderful brown markings running down their back. And this is different to the introduced rainbow trout, which is also here as well. And those fish are beloved of the predators along this stretch of river. So the youngsters will be picked off by the grebes and the kingfishers. The adults will be picked off by things like heron. But a short while ago, something a little bit more exotic was here feasting on the trout. It was osprey. So there was a bird here. It was spotted by one of our viewers, and they've sent in some rather wonderful footage and some photos as well. And this one here is feasting on a branch very close to where I am right now. And it wasn't just the one, there were two of them. These two birds, these two ospreys, are well known. One of them is on its way back to Rutland, and the other heading all the way up to Scotland. And we've got some glorious photos of them in motion. We have the wings being thrown forward as this one here has spotted a fresh fish and is heading down to the water to pluck it up and fly away with it. And this shot here shows a fish being taken from the water. Now, classically, osprey is said to reorientate their catches so the fish is headed head first, which makes it more aerodynamic. That one there looks like it was caught unawares from behind. So I've been going through this stretch of river here for a little while now, and earlier on I had a rather wonderful experience in here, something totally unexpected. Have a look at this. Bullhead! Yes, amazing. Got a beautiful little fish. It's about the length of my thumb, and it's kind of a little bit like my thumb, kind of flattened hobbit shape. They're really quite distinctive looking fish. We've got one right here. They're great. They're flattened dorsally like that. They look a little bit like they've been stepped on, but big bulbous eyes. Absolutely beautiful. I'm chuffed to bits. I really didn't think we'd find one. Have you got it, Johnny?
I do, yeah.
He's got a shot as well. That's amazing. Normally he doesn't manage to get them on camera. I'm genuinely surprised the cameraman is still speaking to me. Being as the team had never seen a grown adult so excited about finding such a small fish, they've set me the challenge of finding a bullhead live. So I'm going to have a little poke around some of these rocks here. I've got an underwater camera and I'm going to see if I can find some. They have quite an extraordinary fidelity to individual rocks. So it is possible that we might find one here. They are, however, crepuscular. They're active by dusk. Is there any under there? No, none under that particular rock. So it is also possible that they might have headed out to feed. But I don't give up hope that easily. And as this is a remarkably charming fish, I think this is worth a go. So they're also called miller's thumbs because they're a flattened fish, which looks a bit like, people used to say, a miller's thumb look, because they spent all their time kneading dough, and so they had completely fat thumbs. I'm not having any luck. This is a disaster. There were bullheads everywhere when I came here last time. We did manage to get a hold of one and get some rather wonderful shots in our macro lab. I think I might have one. No. But what you are seeing are wonderful close-up shots, and actually every single one of those little dots there is a chromatophore. It's a pigment-containing cell, and by expanding and contracting those cells, they can change colour, much as a cuttlefish would do. And they have so much personality, so much charisma, these little bullheads, and they are under these stones, just not right now. And so many of the creatures that we've seen here are dependent on the quality of the water. So the mayfly eggs, for example, even in very low levels of pollutants, they'll be nothing like as successful as they would in a really good, clear stream like this. The bullheads, the minnows, the trout, they all rely on clean, unpolluted rivers. So it's really the onus is on us to take care of our waterways.
Absolutely right.
He's absolutely right. Do you know what I love about Steve? It doesn't matter if he's climbing some ludicrous mountain, risking limb and life like he was last night on BBC Two, or whether he's sort of looking for creatures in a river like that. He's just as enthusiastic. It's brilliant, isn't it?
Not quite as risky, though, in the Sherborne Brook.
No,
not going to get nibbled to death by a bullhead.
I don't think so. You might get a cold toe, that's about it.
I'll tell you what, though, let's go from Sherborne all the way back to the Shetlands, where Julian is no doubt not just enjoying the sights and the sounds of the seabird colony, but the smell too.
Well, Chris, I am enjoying the smell because I'm a bit weird like that. But yes, welcome back. We are at the RSPB Reserve at Sunborough Head. This is home to thousands of nesting seabirds. But here, like elsewhere in the country, they're struggling. Numbers are plummeting. Since 1985, guillemots are down by 23%. Fulmars, they're down by 32%. Razorbills, down by 35%. Shags, then this list goes on, 60%. But most worryingly, kittiwakes are down by 64% since 1985. Now, I'm here with Daisy Burnell from the Joint Nature Conservation Committee. Hi Daisy, thanks for coming tonight.
Not a problem.
Can you tell us, what is going on?
Well, it's a bit of a complex picture really. Seabirds have got potential pressures acting upon them from all directions. So you have these climate change issues, especially with extreme weather conditions. You've got mammals introduced and non-native mammals potentially eating their chicks and their eggs. And pollution as well is another concern that we have. So these guys have got a lot on their plate at the moment, and this is potentially why we're seeing these population declines.
And especially food, I'm imagining.
Yeah.
Food availability, like sand eels, for example, that's a big problem.
Yeah, we've got poor quality food out there at the moment for these guys, so chick provisioning and for themselves, it's not looking all that good.
So how do you keep tabs on thousands of seabirds?
For a lot of hard work, yeah. So we have annual monitoring that goes on through the Seabird Monitoring Programme, but we also do these periodic censuses. So this is what's going on just now, seabirds count. So our partners are off out doing all the reserves and the protected areas, but we've also got a lot of sites to do. So nearly 10,000 sites.
Okay,
and
so here we go. We've got a map, because we like maps. And this is what 10,000 seabird sites looks like. Now, we're up here in the Shetlands. It's absolutely covered in red dots. And as we move around, as you'd expect, there are red dots pretty much along the whole coastline. But there's dots in the inland here. What's going on, Daisy?
yeah, something that people don't necessarily associate with seabirds is the fact that they actually do like to breed inland. So we've got great cormorants, we've got black-headed gulls and common terns, in fact. So there's a whole range of species out there that people can be getting involved with and you know, helping us monitor and helping us survey these guys. So you don't have to be by the coast to get involved, which is really nice.
So 10,000 seabird sites. You're looking at the seabird count coordinator, this one lady here. So she really needs your help. Of course she has volunteers, but she needs more. And this is how you can get involved. Take a look at this film. It might give you some inspiration.
The Ladybirds are a group of women who come together to enjoy birds.
We enjoy birding and just getting out and about, and for once it's a beautiful day.
I started this group and I've been absolutely amazed by the response and the fun that we've had.
We learn from each other
We
as
learn,
well.
yeah.
And some of us might have more expertise in some areas than others.
You know, we are enmeshed into the Shetland Birding Society now. We are a part of it.
And just being invited to be part of the tern survey as well, and it's really an acceptance. You know, we kind of trust you to do this. You know, you can do it.
In the world that we live in at the moment, there are so many pressures on our wildlife that it's really important we have very good data to back up what we do in the future about looking after that wildlife.
So that is one of the ways you can get involved, just like the ladybirders. Now, Daisy, if people do want to get out there and start seabird spotting, maybe not on an evening like today, there's hardly anything to be seen out there, is there? But if they want to, what do they need to do?
Well, they need to sign up, but also all you really need is an accurate way of counting. So we've got glorious clickers. They're a fantastic way of keeping tabs on those thousands of guillemots, and a good pair of bins or an easier way to spot these birds and ID them actually on the cliffs.
So just binoculars, a counter and a lot of passion. So please get involved. Go to the Springwatch website. There'll be all the information you need to know about how you can get in touch with the Seabirds Count programme. And please help Daisy and, of course, our seabirds. For now, it's back to Chris and Michaela at Sherborne.
Thanks, Gillian. And we can't underestimate the value of citizen science. The Americans started it with the SETI project. They all got together to look for aliens. They haven't found any yet, but we took over citizen science and we do a great job with it in the UK, so do try and get involved with that if you possibly can.
And a really good example of great citizen science is the RSP Big Garden Birdwatch. Happened in January, lots of you got involved. 420,000 this year, counted 6.7 million birds. And what we ask you to do, or what the RSPB ask you to do, is spend an hour in January counting the birds in your back garden in one weekend. Lots of you do that, and the great thing years, lots of families get involved too. You sent us in some photographs. This is from Phil Burgess. There's a nice smiley girl counting her birds. Dan Rutherford, that's of Lola, and I love this one. This is the Fit family, and there's Batman searching for Robin.
Bet he didn't found him because Catwoman probably got the robin first. But let's just move on to some of the data that's been generated. Due to the large number of people doing this over a large period of time, all the way back to 1979, we've got some good data. Let's just look at 2008 to 2018, the last 10 years. So 10 years ago in our gardens, we had 30% of gardens finding goldfinches. But this year, 2018, we see that that's gone up to 34%. A 4% increase in goldfinches in our garden. We think that's because there's a better survival rate of goldfinches out in some parts of the countryside, and also the demise of greenfinches means that they have access to the feeders. That might be implemented too.
So they're up, but let's have a look at starlings. 10 years ago, 50% of you saw starlings, or they were seen in 50% of gardens. 10 years later, it's down 8% to 42%. So that's a drop of starlings being sighted, and we think that's probably because of a reduction of their invertebrate prey due to intensification of farming.
Changes in farming practices may have benefited another species though. The sowing of winter wheat means that there's been an increase in the number of wood pigeons, so more wood pigeons in the country. Change of confidence means that they're coming into towns and into our gardens. So let's have a look at this. In 2008 there were 57% of gardens having wood pigeons, but this year, 2018, no less than 75% of our gardens had wood pigeons in them, an increase of 18% of our birds.
That's amazing, isn't it?
It's pretty good stuff, isn't it? And this is generating real data because of that weight of statistics, which is telling us lots of new things. So when you see a citizen science project, don't underestimate its value. It really can make a difference.
Yeah, please get involved, and also get involved with our programme. We're on for 3 weeks, and there's plenty of ways that you can get involved and that you can watch.
The easiest way to reach us is to go online and be our friend on social media. You can like us on Facebook, adding your pictures and comments to our page. Follow us on Instagram and tag us in your photographs. Or tweet us your questions at BBC Springwatch. And don't forget, you can watch the live cameras day and night at bbc.co.uk/Springwatch.
Now, the first thing you need to do when you want to effectively conserve something is to find out how much of it there is and where it is. So surveys like this are important. We need to know about increases and declines. We then also need to actually use the enormous range of techniques that we've got to effect positive conservation. And last Friday, I was very, very pleased indeed to play a small role in one of these projects. You see, in 1976, a tiny butterfly disappeared from England. It continues to exist on the west coast of Scotland, but none in England. And now, after that period of time and a lot of hard work, looking for these insects, understanding their ecology, they've been reintroduced. And what a morning it was. Do you know what time I woke up this morning? I'll tell you what time I woke up this morning. I woke up at 4 o'clock. It's not even sunny. It's overcast, and if you want the truth, I'm actually feeling cold. But I'm very excited because I've come here to Rockingham Forest to celebrate the reintroduction of a small but perfectly formed butterfly called the checkered skipper. It disappeared here in 1976, but thanks to the endeavours of a great range of conservationists and some very generous donors, this butterfly is coming back from the brink.
Areas of the forest here have been cleared to create the sunny clearings that the skipper needs. And then it was down to scientists to source a suitable population of butterflies. Surprisingly, the Scottish skippers were a poor match, as they feed on plants that you don't find here. But an area in Belgium, yes, Belgium, proved the most compatible. So a team of specialists travelled there to collect a small number of skippers for this reintroduction. Last night, led by Dr. Dan Hoare from Butterfly Conservation, these butterflies were checked and then housed in nets to acclimatise them before the big release this morning.
For non-naturalists, I think this is what they call an ungodly hour. But look, the press have turned out en masse on behalf of this small and seemingly insignificant butterfly, but not insignificant for the British news crews today, is it? Fantastic.
We're just ecstatic to be here and seeing it, you know, officially back in England. Is yeah, it's pretty exciting, isn't it? So yeah.
It's a momentous occasion. It really is, not just for Northampton's butterflies, but also for national butterflies.
It's been early starts, long days. It's not just a jolly in Belgium that some people thought, but it's all been worth it to get to this point today.
Yeah, so it's a very exciting day. It's been 40 years since these checkered skippers were last flying in the woodlands of Rockingham Forest. It's a nice cool morning. The butterflies are probably going to stay there, but let's take the cage off and set them free.
Okay, you ready then?
Excellent.
If you go very slowly.
Yeah, that's perfect.
And there they are.
Damn, what a thing, isn't it? I can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
another one at the back there.
7, yeah. This one here is slightly paler than this one here.
That's right, so this is a male.
Right.
It's a little bit smaller, a little bit paler. You can recognise the females because they're big, these bright colour patterns, quite a big body because it's full of eggs.
They're not long lived in this adult phase though, are they? So presumably over the next week or so they're going to be quite intensively monitored. You're going to try and follow them around and see what they get up to.
That's right, so we've got some really well trained volunteers who are going to be trying to follow these tiny little butterflies as they buzz around the grassland here. That's not an easy job, but ideally we want to know where the males go, where the females go, do they lay eggs, which grasses do they lay on, and that will all give us insights into what the best habitat is for them here and how to manage future habitat going forwards.
So between 40 and 50 insects have been brought this year. Presumably next year, following year, you're going to need some more to top them up.
That's right, more of the same really. And at the end of that project, we're hoping that checkered skipper will really have a foothold in England and people can start to enjoy seeing it flying in our woods again.
And also, it's an exemplar for conservation science, isn't it? It's a way of showing that we can restore habitats, we can return species, and it can work.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of things wrong with the environment. 7 out of 10 butterfly species are in decline, our moths are in trouble, our birds are declining. We don't have to stand by and watch that without intervening. We can take action. And the Back from the Brink project is all about really taking technical expertise, getting partners working together to share that and inspire the public to see that you know we have a choice about the kind of environment we live in.
It's great when it's a good day for conservation.
It is, yeah.
Because as you
this
say,
is one of the good days.
This is one of the good days and we should savour it. What a fantastic sight. A very good day for conservation, I have to say. Hats off to Butterfly Conservation for all the work they've done in the preparation and effecting this reintroduction. And also huge thanks to the Heritage Lottery Fund, who've given £4.6 million to that Back to the Brink from the Brink project. And it's not just about the checkered skippers, it's about the narrow-headed ant, the little whirlpool ram's horn snail, the pasque-flower, black-tailed godwit, sand lizards, 20 different species, lots of partners coming together, and it's going to be a fantastic way of bringing these species back from the brink. Has it worked with the butterflies? Well, I'm very pleased to say I got a text this afternoon from Dan Hoare saying that they've dispersed well with sightings over several hundred metres, lots of nectaring, and volunteers confirmed this afternoon that they've seen the females laying eggs. So the reintroduction is in action. Fantastic.
Fantastic. Can I just quickly say, now you're back here, I'm having a Really Wild Show reunion moment. It's like Really Wild Show through the ages. We've gone from the 80s, the 90s and the noughties. Good to have you here. It's been really great to have you.
You just made me feel really old.
Well, you are actually. Don't forget you could keep watching our live cameras 20 hours a day on the internet. We'll be back tomorrow. Gillian will be in the Shetlands where she will be surrounded by gannets.
We'll be getting to grips with one of our favourite UK mammals, the red fox.
And I'm going to be back on the river, but this time scanning the banks for slithering serpents.
So that's it from us for our first 90-minute show. We'll see you tomorrow at 8 o'clock. Bye-bye.
Good night.